Up next, Montgomery County's connection to the Smithsonian. Stay tuned. Hi, I'm Gail Street, and this is Paths to the Present. Today, not many people know about the Seneca Quarry. It's south of Poolesville, just up the hill from where Seneca Creek meets the Potomac River. In the 19th century, the site was significant. It produced distinct red sandstone, which was used to build the Smithsonian Castle, not to mention countless others. On today's show, we visit the Seneca Quarry. Early in 2013, on a cold winter morning, hikers, photographers, and people interested in history assembled near Riley's Lock along the Potomac River. They were here for a tour of the Seneca Quarry, the subject of this recently released book, The Smithsonian Castle and the Seneca Quarry. Its author, Garrett Peck, was on hand to be the guide. He explains what drew him to research this site.
It was actually an outgrowth of my last book, which was The Potomac River, A History and Guide. And in that book, I covered hundreds of sites along the 383 miles of the Potomac River. And this was the one site that I found that, gosh, there's not even a single historical marker for it. It's just there, lost in the woods. And it's so historically significant, but no one knows about it. It's just there. And a little bit of advocacy here. I mean, I really hope someday we can have like a visitor park, you know, a self-guiding hiking tour where you can put interpretive signs and so on. There's a lot of really cool stuff inside the quarry, and I think people will see today what a really interesting and cool site it is. Thanks everyone for coming here today. I'm thrilled we had such a great turnout. Our first stop, if you turn around, and you'll see we are right at Seneca Aqueduct. This is a very, very unique structure here. For one, what do you think this thing is made out of? Exactly, it's Seneca sandstone, Seneca redstone, right? Quarried here, right, a few hundred feet away. As well, there's the lockkeeper's house right there, right? Guess what that's made out of? The same stone. So this whole section of the C O Canal, most of the locks, in fact, are made with Seneca redstone. And this is for a very good reason, because the quarry owner negotiated with the C O Canal company over the right-of-way that went through his property. And part of that agreement was that he would sell stone to the C O Canal company. Let me give everyone a few minutes, so walk around, take some photos, and we'll meet on the opposite side of the aqueduct. Let's talk about John Parke Custis Peter, who was the first quarry owner to really make the quarry into a big commercial success. And he was also the person who sold the stone for the Smithsonian Castle project. He was the son of the Peters who built Tudor Place in Georgetown. They owned about 11,000 acres in Montgomery County. And John Parke Custis Peters, the grandson, he was given this land in 1828 by his father. 2 years later, the C O Canal company reaches Seneca. The first, they go all the way up to Lock 23, about a mile away from here. And at that point, they're using eminent domain to condemn the land along the way, and then seize it for the canal. It's a public project, right? So he agrees to settle. And at this point, though, the C O Canal company offers him a huge benefit. First off, they say, since he owns the quarries that are right along here, we'll be glad to actually use your stone to build all the different locks, essentially between 7 locks and all the way up to what's now Brunswick. The other piece is what you're looking at right here. This is called the turning basin. This is not natural. This is man-made. This was 20,000 cubic yards of soil that they had to dig out to create a harbor right at the foot of the quarry. So this is actually a pretty good deal here for Peter, and I think he realizes this. And so he actually starts to buy more of the quarries further upriver as well. So he ends up owning the whole mile-length segment of the Potomac River right along here.
But I think they had a place.
Everyone, the Seneca stone cutting mill. Like something in Rome, ancient Rome. There was, in fact, a mill here that the Peters used for the Smithsonian Castle project. Where that was, we're not exactly certain. there are no quarry company records that survived and no Peter family records of the quarry operations or anything, so, which is really a shame. So I had to piece together the history of it by finding archival stuff, by finding photographs. A lot of newspaper articles came in handy. And I found one newspaper article that talked about the Seneca Sandstone Company, which purchased the quarry from the Peter family right after the Civil War. So that company then capitalized itself, and they built the mill here in 1867, 1868. I found one newspaper article where they mentioned that they had quadrupled the size of the mill from the one that was here before. So I don't know, was this the original mill that the Peters had, or was that a different site? We just don't know. There's no record of the other mill that I've been able to find yet. Shall we go inside? And I'll give everyone a few minutes time to walk around and take some photos. So the building is in very poor shape. Yeah. You see the giant sycamore tree that has fallen down. This fell back in December, which the state is planning on removing. It's really a shame. I mean, every one of these trees at some point becomes a threat, poses a threat to the structure here. This is a one-of-a-kind building in North America. There's nothing else like this. And if we don't take care of it, I mean, 100 years from now, this will be gone. It'll be just a pile of rubble. I want to point out actually two pieces of historically important graffiti, because this tells us about when the Seneca Sandstone Quarry closed altogether. You see the name right there, L. Sager. And then he carved his name again, right there. But this time it says 1901, right next to it. Yeah, he was a quarry worker. He was the son-in-law of the last superintendent of the quarry, and a man named George Good. And he worked here at the mill. We have photos, a photo of him with a bunch of other quarry workers right on the outside. But I was able to piece together when the quarry actually closed based on the DC permit system, newspaper articles and discussions of Seneca buildings in 1901. Local lore says the quarry closed at the turn of the century. And then we have finally Sager's graffiti that he put right here on the stone cutting mill. And I think it's important here for him. I mean, he met his wife here. He had his whole life here wrapped around the quarry. And so I think when this place here closed down, he wanted to remember what was an important event in his life. Let me give everyone a few minutes chance to go photograph that. Hiking through the woods. So if you look down, what do you see? What kind of plants do you see? There's daffodils growing and periwinkle, exactly. Those are domestic plants because there were once little houses that were right here. People lived in the quarry. And you'll see the turning basin is right there. So there would have been harbor facilities so they could upload the stone and so on and get supplies and whatnot. Whatever houses were here were probably wooden, and they're long since gone. You can probably see a bit of like a basement right there. But someone obviously built a little garden for themselves because they planted daffodils and periwinkle. And here we are 110, 120 years later, and the plants are still here, or at least their successors. We're going to keep going. We'll see our first quarry. It's a small one here coming up here in a couple minutes, and then we'll actually keep walking past that, and then we'll stop at the big quarry. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is what we call the big quarry. This is the biggest of all the Seneca quarries. There's, a dozen quarries along the stretch of the Potomac River, but this is the very largest of all of them. So, and we actually have photos from the 1890s showing this quarry right here in action. There's one photo that I found that we put in the book, and it shows the workers in two different rows, the African-American workers below and then the white workers above. Remarkable how much the site still looks like what it looked like way back when, other than the trees and so on. One of the questions I get asked a lot is, why is this place not filled in with water? You've all flown over a quarry and you see it's filled in like a swimming pool, right? This is not that kind of quarry. These are cliffs, and they simply were just lopping away at them vertically, right? So imagine where we were standing 200 years ago, we would have been way underground, right? We would have been buried in rock right now because the stone would have started very close over there to the turning basin, and they just kept hacking away at the cliffside and so on until they got all the way up to there. So there's still more stone that's there. How much of it is good anymore, we don't know, but we can't quarry it anymore. It's all parkland now. Some things to point out. Directly ahead, right there, you can see the one very thick seam of redstone. You'll see the iron, the remnants here from the iron rods that they had to drive into the cliffside here to split the rock away. They would then insert some wedges, and then they would start prying until it finally cracked, and it would split away in these huge stone blocks. This redstone, it's very soft when you first carve it. Once it's exposed to air, it becomes legendarily hard. It's one of the reasons they liked it as a durable material, for it to harden very quickly over time. These were anchors that supported the derricks, so cables would have looped into those big eyelets that you're looking at, and they would have then flown through the air and then attached themselves over to the different derricks. The derricks themselves look like giant telephone poles, and those were used then to lift up, using a pulley system, to lift up the blocks and deposit them over in the different rail cars that were then taken over to the stone cutting mill. We are walking up the side of the Seneca Quarry, and we are going to go see the quarry master's house. This house that you see right here is the quarry master's house. You'll notice a couple things about it. For one, 2 front doors, right? It's a duplex, meant for 2 different shift managers for the quarry. So the house was possibly built as early as 1830. I think the most likely scenario was probably built by the Seneca Sandstone Company after the Civil War. That company bought the property from the Peter family in 1866 when they sold off the farm. So this house, though, is today lived in by Bob and Loretto Albiol, who restored it. Maryland has this program called the Resident Curatorship Program. There's about 80 or so houses like these around the state, whereby they take historic houses that are owned by the state and get someone to live in them. So someone then has the responsibility to take care of it and do the renovations and so on. You'll notice that there's a number of different types of stones on here, which is really cool. So in essence, you'll see there's some very, very large pieces that are all ashlar. They're very highly polished. You see on the left-hand side. You see other pieces that are small rubble and larger rubble pieces, which are hand cut versus machine cut. So this gave them a way to show off what the quarry could actually do for their customers. We're going to walk over real quick over to that stone outcropping, and then we'll walk over to Bull Run. This is what the blocks look like after they were cut. And they would have been then lifted up here and then placed in the little trolley and sent down to the mill. You see how large those are? I mean, there's no way a person could ever pick these things up. These things weigh a couple tons. So pretty remarkable. Now, if you go stand on here, look down the river. I mean, imagine when this quarry was operating, there weren't hardly any of these trees here at the time. So you could probably see all the way down to Washington, D.C. on a clear day, or at least see the top of the Washington Monument. Very last stop will be to see the Bull Run Quarry. And that's literally the quarry where they got the stone for the Smithsonian Castle. This is Bull Run. This is a natural creek, but there was once actually a road that connected all the way to River Road, and that was built by the Peters, because this was the main quarry. The reason that it goes so much into the earth is because it's man-made. And it goes up about 600 feet. So it starts, you see the C O Canal down there, about 150 feet down there, and then goes up there probably another 450, 500 feet. So pretty extensive. It's a large quarry. There were 15 or 16 different quarries all bid on the Smithsonian project. There were granite quarries, there were marble quarries, and so on. And then John Parke Custis Peter bid on it. The lowest bid up to him was the Quiet Quarry, which bid 40 cents per perch. A perch is a square foot. Peter bids 25 cents per perch, so significantly under the market. And of course the building committee went with that one because it was the cheapest one, right? So, but yeah, this is the site, this is it, where they got the Smithsonian Castle out of. So, once they built the Smithsonian Castle, that kind of started the 5-decade stretch of Victorian architecture in DC that went all the way to 1900. So all the buildings that were built in that segment, a great number of them have Seneca redstone in them. So as Knight Kiplinger likes to say, the Seneca redstone was the stone that built Victorian Washington.
Well, that's all the time we have for this show. If you have comments or ideas for future shows, send us an email to paths.present@verizon.net. I'm Gail Street. Thanks for watching.